Welcome to the first ever hospitality panel with both current and future leaders. I have the pleasure of being joined by Alisher Nazir and Mr. Bouvier, the Président from the Luxury Hotel School in Paris. Today we're going to be talking about resilience of the hospitality industry with examples from both America and Paris. Thank you for joining me, Alisher and Mr. Bouvier. Maybe before you both start talking at the same time, let me first welcome Mr. Bouvier from his office in London.
Thank you, Tom, for the président. I like
the
effort.
Exactly. It's a tradition that we have to keep going. Exactly.
So, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And it's always good during this time of confinement to, meet up. So I'm really happy to be there and talk about the future, a bright future, I hope.
I hope so too. And joining us from, cross-continent, across the pond, Alisher, thank you for joining us.
And just on the other end of the pond, Tom, yes.
Thank you for having me. Maybe an introduction question is, how have you experienced some of the consequences of this confinement so far?
Well, for us as a school, it was really, we were the first ones to be closed. So in France, at least. So the message was clear. Do not teach. Students should not meet and be together. So we switched everything online, which was, of course, already part of our processes. So that was not really a challenge, even though at this scale, we never did that, like everything online. But the main thing was that at this time of year, so end of March, early April, normally our students are starting their placements. So we just kept receiving in the early times of the crisis emails from the hotels and saying, okay, so we're delaying, now we're canceling, oh, now we're closing. And in the end, the students were really ready to start their placement. And of course, all the placements were canceled. So that was the first, the real disturbance to our usual operations. For teaching, it's really nice to teach online, and our university degrees are really based on a lot of individual work, personal work, so that's not really disruptive.
So Alisher, expanding on the internships and everything, you are currently on internship, if I'm not mistaken. How did you experience this, everything that has happened in the past months?
Well, actually, initially, so my internship was meant to start in New York. But I mean, of course, unfortunately, given the situations, it was like, cannot go to New York now. All the offices are closed. Nobody is in those buildings, everything's shut down. So we decided, let's start remotely. So I got the opportunity to start remotely. And I think now, given the whole situation, I think it's more like our first reaction in terms of like my internship in the company. Oh, so the company, by the way, PKF Hotel Experts. It's a hotel kind of consultancy, hospitality consultancy firm. And so right now it's been more of like, okay, so what is the reaction? Where is everything going? So really trying to see what can we expect in the upcoming months, right? Because we're in a bit of like in a gray area, I would say at the moment. Right? Not really everything is very clear, and not every direction is clear. The only thing we can do is basically, I guess, assume from previous occasions and continue moving forward. But that's a very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a nice introduction into the topic today, the resilience of the, between brackets, luxury hotel industry, but I think applicable to the entire hotel industry or hospitality industry. Mr. Bouvier, maybe posing the question to you is, what do you consider resilience in the hospitality industry?
Well, it is clear that we have some experience in France and especially in Paris of difficult times. Because in the last few years, we had terrorist attacks, we had strikes, huge strikes, we had demonstrations, and now the health crisis. So we definitely have some experience of disruption to normal operation in hotels. Of course, this crisis is unprecedented because, well, here in Paris, hotels just closed down. All the luxury hotels are closed. So that's unprecedented because usually we're running on low operations. And the disruption of all the crisis, even demonstrations, were only like super disruptive one day of the week, like when they were demonstrating on Saturdays, and so that's brand new. But after the terrorist attacks, so here, of course, hotels were operating normally, but it's the tourists that went there. And this definitely has taught us to run on low occupancy rates, but closing down, of course, is totally different.
No, that's a nice example indeed. It's a very different type of crisis that you're facing now. Alistair, what do you think that resilience means for the hospitality industry?
Well, I think when you look at resilience, I mean, yeah, especially within hospitality, I mean, it's always going to be different in every scenario, you know. So like, I don't know, if we look back at the financial crisis in 2008, I mean, things that came out of it, I mean, the most disruptive company in our industry right at the moment, Airbnb, they were founded back in 2008, you know. So it's funny because you see all of these different situations come into light, you know, and then you're like, wow, like, you know, are things really going down, down, down? Are we going to have a new kind of type of travel, you know, trend coming into the market? Are you going to have a new type of, so like what kind of new things are there out there, you know? Because I think every single time when there's a downturn, there's some sort of positive or disruptive outcome after that specifically, you know, because behavior changes, right? Trends definitely change at a faster, more rapid rate. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, for example, I was watching an STR webinar yesterday, and it was quite interesting because they said, I mean, analyzing data from hotels in China, which are already slowly starting to open up again, the first type of travel that they see coming back is actually the weekend travelers, rather than the business travelers, corporate travels that are traveling during the week. They didn't really see any exponential growth or comeback within that sector, but it's more specifically the weekend kind of travelers and people, of course, wanting to eventually use up all of that time to make the most out of it. So, of course, either is it go back, see family, or is it to go and, of course, like travel on the weekend, go somewhere, experience something. So, I mean, those are some sorts of different behaviors that I have been seeing. But it's quite interesting because I think what's great about the hospitality industry is that it's always there, and it is resilient in the fact that it has the opportunity to continuously change, and in a positive way.
So you're already mentioning recovery. You're talking about indeed some of the travels which will come back first. Mr. Bouvier, how do you think, well, the question is not just how, but if and when, and there's many different propositions that we can use here, but how do you see the eventual recovery of the hospitality, and do you see an eventual recovery?
Yeah, you're right. Resilience is really the word, and if we're used to crisis, what history showed us and studies is that usually business comes back to normal very quickly. That's our experience, at least here in Paris. That even after the attacks, and that was the longest recovery, and usually after a few months, business comes back to normal, and of course that's what everyone is hoping for. But Alicia, you're right. It's not that clear that this time there might be some changes to the habits, desires of tourists, and it's clear that in France we expect that the first thing to come back is local tourism, as we're in a culture where indulgence is important, and we expect that when hotels and restaurants mainly reopen, the French are going to rush to restaurants because we've never been eating that bad. I mean, we can cook a little bit, but it's supposed to be a compliment to our great chefs all around France that are cooking for us every day, and their energy and their talent is wasted at the moment. And so my advice is to confine yourself with a chef. They're widely available.
Because in 2008 we had the run on the banks, and now we have the run on the restaurants here. That's
Well, it's France. So the idea of not being able to go to the restaurant, that's really unprecedented. That's really new. So that it's certain that when restaurants reopen, there will be a rush there. It's going to be difficult to get a reservation, provided that the reopening doesn't have some limitations in terms of gatherings. So we're really kept in the dark in terms of a scenario for reopening. But after a fashion, when things go back to normal, yes, there will be a need for indulgence, and there will be some local tourism. For the question, of course, is the future of tourism as we know it today, and the future of luxury tourism in particular. So that's, in my opinion, there are many scenarios.
Yeah, so that's what I would like to explore, because, well, Alistair, you mentioned weekend travelers. Mr. Bouvier, you mentioned local tourism, that those are the markets that will re-emerge. Those are existing markets. Do you also think that there will be a new type of travel?
I think definitely. I mean, possibly. There's a very high possibility. So I mean, of course, we look at weekend travelers. So that's something that I believe would be, I mean, temporary at the moment. Because like as weekend travel continues, but I mean, at the same time, eventually, business corporate travel will bounce back. In due course, maybe not instantly, but maybe a little bit longer. And I think like new types of travel, I mean, we could potentially see, especially with all of the changing habits that we're taking, right? I believe like if you see, I think I read a book recently, and then it says that making a habit, I mean, takes you about 3 weeks, 3 weeks of consistently doing. So I think if you're involved in social distancing in quite some time, I believe that your kind of habits and your travel perspectives could potentially change. So maybe not really wanting to focus on urban areas as much, trying to go outside of the city. So maybe you see less and less people wanting to travel to cities like New York or London.
Let me put this on you, Alistair. How have your travel habits changed?
We're not traveling at all.
Yeah.
At this moment,
well, I mean,
not at all.
The moment,
but afterwards,
well,
do you think you'll look differently at travel? Will you make changes to your travel lifestyle?
I think a lot of people are seeing less and less interest in traveling to very densely populated areas. And that's something that, for example, I'm experiencing firsthand from my family, for example. They're saying like, yeah, like, why do we want to go to places such as like New York that are super populated, and then eventually, like, whenever outbreaks happens or something like this happens, it's always in the bigger cities, right? So I think like this can potentially move and give an opportunity for let's say other types of travel that are more like focused outside of big populated cities, right? So whether there are people are staying in different different other opportunities, so more in the countryside.
Is this a long-term stay thing, or is this what you're saying is, okay, so maybe people who already live in this city might reconsider living there and say, I want to live somewhere else? Because, for example, I see your point, but I doubt that, for example, everybody will now sort of say, okay, I never want to travel to New York anymore as a holiday destination.
Yeah, no, with that I agree. I think with living, it's definitely an aspect. I think with traveling, it could take, I mean, it wouldn't be a majority, but I do think that you would see an increase in people traveling more outside of larger cities in terms of trying to take vacations in the mountains or vacations in other aspects.
I mean, let me take it to you, Mr. Bouvier, here, because I visited the campus at the old site, and now it's moving to a new site. So in the new site, it's at the center of Paris. How do you see this? Well, do you think that there will be a shift in mindset in the way that people consider travel and locations?
Yes, thank you for mentioning our new campus is just very near across the department stores. So we're definitely in the center of Paris, and I mean, department stores is a good example of a place where it's definitely about going together in a crowded environment to go shopping. So how is this going to be in the future? So luxury hotels usually are less crowded, and I totally agree that especially after the recovery, there will be an interest for deserted places like hotel in the country, surrounded by fields only, and yes, but. That might be temporary. Can you? I mean, you were talking about New York. I'll talk about Paris. A weekend in Paris in a beautiful suite in a luxury hotel. That can definitely not compare with.
If you start listing the amenities, then we start realizing you're selling your own suite. But if you...
Yeah, I mean, it's really like it's something you need to see Paris, and then you can die. They say so. So yeah. Definitely. That will remain, but there might be a lot of changes. So an example, because in Paris, the busy times, for example, are fashion weeks. So can you organize a fashion week online? Difficult. There has been some experiences to organize fashion week, virtual fashion week, but it's also about getting together and looking at the pieces, the objects, I mean, from close to the real thing. So that's another question. Is another big time in Paris is for example, the air show fairs. So what about a fair where thousands of people get together in the same place? And so that's really the question about, are we going to change everything, or are some activities like fairs necessary? You were talking about 3 weeks to get accustomed to anything, and it is certain that there will be an increase in online meetings. Obviously, it will be much more acceptable today to organize even an important meeting online, rather than meeting in the let's say the hotel in an airport, like it's done usually. So there will be an increase in online meeting. It works very well, but again, doing business is also about seeing the people in person, and also about, especially in France, sharing a good time. Again, restaurants are there.
I was going to say, they're going to restaurants again. Yeah.
Yeah. So in my opinion, the first scenario that we should consider is the scenario that I would call back to normal with adjustment. So I believe that the increase in online meetings and maybe a little bit less of business travel is an adjustment that could happen in the near future, but with globally the big events and the rest going and tourism to visit going back to normal. But there's another aspect in this scenario, back to normal. Certainly, there will be a new focus on hygiene, on yes, all the everything that has to be done or that can be done to limit in restaurants any sort of are chefs going to have to work with a mask? That's a question. What about the maids that clean your room? Should they use special products and heat to kill the germs, or wear a mask? Because when we're talking about very top luxury hotels, there is of course a huge expectation from guests, and that certainly from now on will include increased hygiene.
Basically, what you're saying is that the essence of tourism of people wanting to come together, people wanting to meet one another will remain the same, but a lot of facilitating aspects of that, so the core will remain the same, but facilitating such as cleanliness, such as maybe facilitating of meetings and business, they will be, they will be more supported in an alternative way. And well, the question to you is that, do you think that improves the overall resilience of our industry?
Well, so it's just one scenario, and it's the best one, back to normal. But of course, it's only one option. It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen. But in that scenario, yes, everything goes back to normal, and traveling, maybe there will be an increased realization that traveling to other countries is a luxury.
Exactly. All right. So let me put this to the young people in the group. No offense to you, Mr. Bouvier, but so let me ask this to you, Alicia and Clément. Do we want things to go back to normal exactly the way they were, with some slight adjustments, what Mr. Bouvier just proposed?
Well, I mean, I think it would be quite interesting to see changes, you know. I mean, given our generation, we love change, you know, we love new things. So take, for example, I don't know, glamping, you know, so the sense of like glorious camping, you know, coming out and going out and, going to completely new environments. I think that's something that you'll see growing a lot. And it is a big trend already in the industry, which I think could take a bigger takeoff, you know, especially from this, because, it involves wellness. And Mr. Bouvier was mentioned earlier, which I think is a very good point, as in like hygiene, cleanliness. These kinds of factors are very interesting to take into consideration, you know. So I think you will see new different things emerge, and I think change is interesting. And I like change, specifically myself, at least.
Okay, so you're all for change.
I'm all for change.
I think what you mentioned about glamping is it expands on your earlier point of people seeking different locations. Because, for example, camping, you don't really do in the center of Paris. You don't set up your tent at the Champs-Élysées. So glamping, is that then a middle ground between seeking luxury and well-being outside of a
correct,
highly dense populated area?
Correct. I haven't really heard much about glamping within densely populated areas, but I think, the idea is to basically be able to go out into the wild, you know, so to say, and then be able to stay somewhere very nice, you know, something very luxurious, you know, something very personal, but at the same time, very authentic and naturous, basically. So rather than, you know, building your own tent, staying in a tent, you're actually staying in a suite or in something much nicer in the middle of nowhere.
Mr. Bouvier, your thoughts on this, glamping?
Well, I would definitely not be an expert on anything related to camping. You certainly can have a tent installed in your suite if you like. That would be the ultimate glamorous camping, wouldn't it? But I totally understand the idea, and of course, what is desirable in camping globally is space. And you know, here in France, the hotel classification is based on the size of the room and the size of the common areas in the hotel. So, definitely, I believe that there will be an increased awareness of the luxury that traveling is in general, but also of the luxury of space. And here, luxury hotels are definitely the place where space is part of the offer. So the rooms are very large, of course, but also the common areas. And when you enter the lobby of a luxury hotel, there is plenty of room. And this distance is now something that will be regarded as desirable and part of the need for security. So I believe that from now on, especially for wealthy individuals, the idea that someone comes close to you and share germs with you is something that will be regarded as an intrusion. And of course, that is going to be a huge change in our society worldwide, globally. And luxury hotels can build on this, of course, to limit the, well, already, I mean, if you're a star, if you're famous and you're staying in the luxury hotels, they are going to, there are procedures to limit in your interactions with anyone, and including protection. And then you enter in the car that is in the basement, and then goes out, and then you're directly in your green room to wait for your concert or whatever. So you're always protected from other people, and this is going to become a part of what luxury is about. And that's not really desirable, but I mean, that's a possible trend.
I like that. Alicia, anything you'd like to add? Otherwise, I'd like to close off this topic on this, and then I'm sure there's plenty more to discuss. But then I want to move on to the article that you wrote as well about the power of hospitality to improve general resilience, or improve the resilience maybe of sort of the world and the healthcare workers, and what hospitality can do to help them. Maybe may I invite you and ask you to give a little bit of a perspective on what the article that you wrote is about, and why it's important to the topic of resilience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, well, the article that was written that I co-authored, I mean, I think it highlights the aspect that in times like this, the hospitality industry can definitely be of help, you know, and I mean, we're seeing this highlighted everywhere around the world so far. I mean, of course, not every single hotel is doing this, you know, because I mean, that would be quite difficult. And I mean, hotels that say, okay, look, like, I mean, if we do want to get back to our normal ways, right, this is the best interest of everybody, right? So it's not as if I'm trying to compete with another hotel right now, you know, no, I'm trying to help, I'm trying to aid with this current situation that we have, right? So that we can get back to our normal ways as fast and as soon as possible, basically, you know, that's one of the motifs. But I mean, at the same time, you're doing yourself a great community service. So I mean, this article, basically, we just discover all the different initiatives that are out there, and yeah, what can they do in order to help the community, and what they are doing.
So how important do you think the hospitality industry is for this recovery?
I think, I mean, not huge, but I mean, of course, to an extent, I mean, every little thing helps. So I think the hospitality industry can definitely play its role by doing the one thing that it has most: bedrooms, right? And I mean, bedrooms are shortages that we are seeing everywhere. We're seeing that in Italy, you know, we saw that in China. I mean, they were building whole hospitals, you know, within days. So I mean, that situation itself is like, okay, well, I mean, if we cannot build a hospital in a day, right, to host extra people, what we can do is that we can use a hotel, you know, I mean, but of course a hotel, and we can host people that do not necessarily need ICU care facilities, you know, intensive care, but people that more show mild symptoms. If we want to quarantine people, if we want to self-isolate and help people in the way that we're doing now. So that's basically the aspect that, and the role that it can play, I think.
How do you see that, Mr. Bouvier? Well, of course, that always has been, hotels always have been playing a role in times of crisis. We know that when there are disasters, natural disasters or terrorist attacks, and some hotels always play the role of shelter. Some hotels can be organized with increased security to serve as headquarters for the relief operations. So it has always been in the culture of hospitality to open the doors when a place to rest and to regroup was required. So here in France, it's a bit particular because hotels are closed. Everything is closed down. So, but I know that some initiatives, some beds have been opened to. I read in your article to homeless people. So I knew that Accor opened some beds for health workers, but also for homeless people. So definitely there is this effort that is ongoing. But most hotels are closed. So then there is nothing happening, and especially for top luxury hotels, everyone can understand that it's not the easiest place to open for for this kind of assistance, as the whole place is organized with huge areas and very expensive everything. So there it would be a last resort, but of course some more standardized hotels are much easier to operate with a low personnel, and also so that's usually the kind of places that are opened in times of relief. But when you have a crisis in a country, it's usually the Sofitel or the Intercontinental or the Hilton that becomes the place, the center of the relief operation. So we're used to that. But again, here, everyone's supposed to be at home. So the need, apart from health workers and homeless indeed, the need for room is maybe not as high as in a city that is under attack. So, but it's true that it is in the culture of the hotel industry.
So the key question that I want to pose to you both then is, it's a difficult one, but a good one at that, is what should the hospitality industry do, or what should we consider to help out, both as individuals and, well, as the school and for the future leaders? What should we do?
Well, just to quickly, just to build on the initiatives, I just wanted to mention a quick, interesting article I read a couple of days ago. That there were actually, funny enough, a couple of hotels that I heard in Switzerland that were luxury hotels that were offering coronavirus quarantine packages. So these are basically luxury hotels that could offer a kind of isolation for individual people that wanted to self-isolate and hide within, in the mountains in Switzerland. And then they were actually offering coronavirus tests as well. So basically in-room service, no access to other guests or no access to employees, everything done with well and very high hygiene. And they were actually offering these, coronavirus packages where they were we have a nurse on site. And then at the same time, for 500 euros, we can offer you a coronavirus test as well, in room. So I was wow, that's, some people are really taking it in, in very different aspects, especially the luxury segment, which I found very interesting. But I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, well, it's in the scenario where not everything goes back to normal, but quarantine becomes a usual practice, a usual exercise, and we have a quarantine every year. It is obvious that hotels, especially luxury hotels, are going to offer the luxury confinement package. That's because, now we've been leaving the confinement, and obviously I would be better off in a suite at the Ritz. so definitely, and Switzerland is, of course, the place where that would emerge, because you find in Switzerland luxury hotels that are built over or linked or close to a hospital, or a private hospital. So you can go. Usually, it's not for disease; it's more for plastic surgery and or this kind of thing. But you have the huge spa, the thermal bath, the luxury hotel, and the clinic. and so definitely they're organized for this kind of offering. So I'm absolutely not surprised. And if you are maybe a little bit old and you live on your own, staying a month all alone, if you've got money, doesn't sound like a good idea. And staying in a hotel where it's all organized, where you do not meet anyone, when you go to a different place when the cleaning is done and the food is prepared with super precautions, and you've got the hospital that is linked to the hotel, sounds like of course, a package that is going to be really sought after. It's something that could work very well.
I think sorry, I was just thinking if they can guarantee hygiene, I think that's the most important factor. If they can guarantee that hygiene, then I think that's the most important factor, and then people would. That's very interesting.
Well, that's what we said about the increased focus on hygiene. The good thing is that in hotels, especially in top luxury hotels, we have plenty of people, plenty of processes, and and we can definitely increase even more the processes in terms of hygiene. I think that a luxury hotel is halfway already has the same kind of processes that a hospital has. It's the same. It's the same kind of processes. It's only lighter version, and so yes, increasing it and increasing the standards in terms of hygiene dramatically in terms of quarantine is definitely something that is within our grasp. So yes, that could be a way for hotels to stay open in a strange sort of way during regular quarantines. But you know that hotels, especially luxury hotels, are used to closing for a month or 6 months. That's usual in the luxury hotel industry during renovations. So renovations comes every 3 or 4 or 5 years, and
the perfect
so
time now.
maybe 10 years, but we're definitely used to closing a hotel for several months and then opening again. And now there are some of course some relief funds from governments for any business closing, especially for hotels, for example. So I mean, that's a financial decision to stay open during quarantines and offer packages, or just close down and maybe in the future do renovations? You know, luxury hotels today, they renovate, they close every, let's say 10 years, but for a long period of time for large renovations, but they also have a percentage of their rooms that are under constant renovations. So we could imagine that the hotels do not renovate rooms round the clock, and an effort in renovation is centered on the quarantine time. So there will be changes, but I'm confident that the hotel industry in general, and especially the luxury industry, can definitely adapt.
Yeah, I think indirectly you both have already answered many of the last questions that I wanted to ask you, which was indeed, so what future changes will we see for the resilience of hotels? I mean, you mentioned different amenities and resources, the hygiene, the hospitals close by, maybe a nurse on staff, the closing down, the renovation, you know, maybe that indeed will be done in quarantine time. Are there other measures or ideas that you think will forever be changed based on this virus to improve the future resilience?
I think personally, though, I mean, one interesting aspect that I did see pick up was a work at home, but at a hotel. So basically people that, I mean, of course, now everybody's working at home, right? Meetings are done via, you know, Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams and things like that. But I think I've been reading a lot of interesting trends where you see people highly interested in basically getting outside of their home atmosphere, right? To get into a different work atmosphere. So for that, I mean, hotels have been trying to step up and offer this kind of quarantine work at home service, where basically you come to a room and then the room is already your kind of workspace, right? Has all the necessary amenities, has everything basically you need, even like, you know, good internet connection, whatever that might be, to host you in order to have a proper and well-organized kind of work day with no distractions. So I think that's an interesting aspect that I saw come up, and I think it's something that maybe we could potentially see trending in the upcoming, of course, you know, year or so. So people that are working at home constantly saying, hey, like, let me go to this hotel, you know, and I'm going to work from the hotel. I'll spend the whole day there, have all the amenities, and I'll be able to work from home, basically.
Yeah, but doesn't that defeat the purpose of a quarantine? If people start moving out in the hotel, even if they're self-isolating, is they're still traveling there?
Well, that's the difference. So I guess that's where it plays the role of locality, right? So say if it's your hotel that's just around the corner. I mean, like, so let's say I have like a luxury collection hotel, married luxury collection hotel, just around the corner. So for me, I mean, I don't think it would hurt if I would have the opportunity to have a room there to myself with all the necessary amenities to go and then to sit and work there and spend the whole workday. I mean, it's very interesting because, I mean, it's not something that I would think as well. You know, I have all the same questions, but like trend wise and numbers wise, you see a lot of that popping up, which is very interesting, I think, as well.
Mr. Bouvier, for you, any thoughts? Do you see opening the doors to have people work at home from your home?
Well, I mean, again, hotels are closed at the moment, but and you have to offer something. Luxury hospitality during time of confinement is maybe the only offering that is interesting, because otherwise you're better at home than even in a large hotel room. But if you're talking about a huge suite with a view on the Eiffel Tower and 3 Michelin star restaurant room service, then maybe you're better than at home. So the luxury industry definitely can offer something during this time for the very wealthy. Because staying a month in a palace in Paris is definitely not cheap. So if you're wondering, we're talking about 50,000. The minimum would be 50,000 a month to stay and have and eat regularly in this restaurant. I'm not talking about going for the wine list and just regular.
Just
surviving.
Bagel. Just the bagel.
Surviving in a palace. So, well, what I would like to say is that in terms of changes, and it's the future for us. But I would like to mention that we should maybe have a look at Asia, and maybe even take a bow to Asia and their understanding of the dangers of crowded people and the importance of hygiene. Because in Asia, you see Asian tourists with masks. You have seen them for decades. And especially here in Paris, everyone's looking at the Chinese tourists with their mask and thinking, what are they afraid of? Well, now we all know what they're afraid of. They're afraid of pandemic, and the world is just telling them right. So same in hotels in Asia, you always have your hands washed when you arrive. And so these are the signs of hospitality, but actually it's also the future. So are we going to wear masks more and more like Asian tourists do? Well, in my opinion, yes, we are. Certainly there will be that is going to be a major change, especially if you're going to a country for a very important business meeting for only a few days, and going through airports and everything. Wearing a mask is going to become very natural, like it is already in Asia. So yeah, well done everyone. We all were laughing at them, like with their masks, and actually they were the future. So that was the future of travel in general. So yes, small things are going to change. Small things like wearing masks that can actually change the world. And I think that we're going to see masks with a huge business in masks, masks with diamonds, masks in gold, like
wow.
the covers.
Maybe with logos, everything.
Exactly like your phone protection. It's going to become a huge market, and in airports, you're going to be able to buy the covers for your phone, or new sunglasses, or the new trendy mask by Gucci. Mm. That's definitely something
interesting.
That is going to happen.
Interesting.
And now, when you open your mini bar in the hotel, you also expect to find masks. Not only the usual slippers in hotels on your
bathrobe, slippers, and a mask. Yeah.
Exactly. That's really going to change. When the confinement started and you were going out for your grocery shopping with a mask, because you were lucky enough to have one mask, then everyone was looking at you like, oh my God, sick or whatever. And now everyone's going out with a mask, and it just looks normal. Exactly like in Asia, it was absolutely normal for them. Mm-hmm. Anytime you were feeling a bit sick, to put on a mask, or where you were going in public transport, to put on a mask because you were very close to other people. But I think this is going to go viral.
Thank you very much. Alistair, anything to add from your side?
I agree.
Yeah, what would be your preferred your mask like design? Would it be a Gucci, Adidas, Nike? What would it?
Yeah, I think I'm more of a Kenzo, but at the same time, I had a bad experience recently, so I wouldn't say so. But
all right. Then I think that's sorry.
The trend now is like black masks. Because if you're wearing a white mask, you look like a doctor. But if you got the black mask, it's like, whoa. It's
Okay.
But are these?
It's like the mask of bull. It's
How reusable? You know, do you have to make them? I think, you know, especially if you want people to usually wear them. Because you need to make them
I think
reusable, right?
that's exactly the discussion.
I think.
Because if you wear masks and you still touch your eyes, for example, then the mask is pointless. So I think there's a lot of
It's a fashion.
exactly. So there's a lot of discussion, I think, still to be had there. But definitely,
Yeah,
I want to
definitely.
thank you both for your insights on the resilience of the hospitality industry and some of the changes we might see to better that future resilience.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Tom.
You're very welcome.